So, based on all the challenges that we've seen last year, my perspective on Sourcing Hero is a simple one. Sourcing Hero is a sourcing leader that was able to navigate his or her team in a positive and an uplifting manner. Now, when I say leader, I'm not necessarily talking about the head honcho, the VP or CPO. It could be leadership of one person, it could be leadership of your team, it could be leadership of your group, your division, or it could be of your whole organization.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sourcing Hero. I'm your host, Catherine. I've got a really great guest for you guys today. His name is Naseem Malik, and he is the managing partner of MRA Global. Welcome to the show today. How are you?
I'm good, Catherine. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad to have you. And we were just chatting about how long it's been since we actually spoke and how it almost just feels like 2021 has started at the speed of light. So with that being said, how has the beginning of your year gone so far?
Absolutely. Yes. The beginning of the year has been no different than what we had started experiencing in probably mid Q4, I would say. That's when we started seeing positive numbers come out, everything from ISM to the uptick on the hiring side to the good news on the vaccines impending rollout. So all of those factors led to a pretty robust start to 2021. So as you mentioned, where did January go?
It was just a couple moments, I swear. Okay, so real quick, for those of us that are not familiar with MRA Global, which you've been with for 8 years, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Real quick, just give us a rundown of what MRA Global does.
Absolutely. We are an executive search firm that focuses on supply chain procurement operations. So as a former practitioner that was in the procurement world for about 15 plus years, I've now gone from sourcing goods and services to now sourcing human capital, or talent as I call it, in the world of supply chain management.
Yeah, talent might be a better description, but sourcing talent, I would say, is probably just as important as sourcing all the goods and services that, supply chain and procurement are doing every day.
You're exactly right. And that's something which when we're speaking with both on the candidate side and on the client side, we always stress that whenever somebody says we need to save money, we need to foster better supplier collaboration, we need to become better negotiators, it's all about the people. So everything is related to talent. So this should be focus number one for any sourcing organization that's looking to achieve their objectives. So I fully agree with you on how important talent sourcing is. And when people ask me, so how is it compared to when you were doing sourcing on the other side? I have to say it's the hardest thing I've ever sourced. Nothing's harder than humans.
So, man, I would imagine that the pandemic and the chaos that ensued last spring probably threw your company for a loop. Tell us how all of that impacted talent sourcing. I would imagine that a lot of businesses started to take a closer look, but you tell me what happened.
Absolutely. It was the tale of not just two stories, but quite a few in 2020. So when we started last year, Q1 up till early March, we were in a unparalleled job market. We were at 3.5%. We had 1 million more jobs than we did people available for those jobs in terms of opening. So in 50 years, the US had not seen such a tight labor market. To fast forward about a quarter, 3-4 months down the road, and we were in the worst job market in almost 70 years. So that pendulum swing was absolutely unprecedented. It's nothing anybody has experienced that is currently working right now. At least I hope is working right now. So to go through from that perspective on the other end was truly challenging. Now, what did happen as we got into Q2 last year and then early Q3 was, yes, you're right. A lot of hiring was put on hold across many sectors. If you can think about retail, if you can think about hospitality, CPG, absolutely, they were crushed in the short term. However, there were a lot of other sectors that went through the roof, right? Think food, beverage, think transportation was strong, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, because of all the ingredients needed to make not just food, but cleanliness products. So those stayed robust as well. So we were fortunate enough to be able to work with some of our clients that were in those sectors. We had plenty that were not in those sectors. So it was not easy going for a while, but luckily we were able to stick with the ones that needed our help and then waited for the others to come back. And gradually that finally happened.
That's good to hear. I feel like that's some reassurance that our audience will probably like to hear as well, that there is some growth happening and there is hiring, probably a completely different strategy for many companies now than it was a year ago, I would imagine.
That's a whole other topic and an absolutely imperative one when you think about how talent is now unbundled from location. See, this is something that had been meant to happen, let's say, or something that so many folks wanted to happen. And that's one of the things that the pandemic has done is a lot of these trends, we'll talk a little bit about this later on, a lot of these trends that were forecasted for 5-10 years down the road have now been accelerated. They all happened in 2020. And this location dependence versus independence is a huge factor in that. But you're right. On the reassurance side, just the PMI numbers that come out every month from ISM, quoted in the Wall Street Journal, quoted even on Bloomberg, important number, and it's showing upward expansion. And the number one constraint to growth is still now labor shortage. So as you think about the manufacturing sector, that's now beginning to ramp up. They're still saying how hard it is for them to find people. A lot of it is because of new regulations on safety protocols and some issues with COVID, but that's a good sign in that growth is back on the right track, still an uphill battle, but we're heading in the right direction.
That's good to hear. And I think that your perspective on this show is going to be different than anyone else. And so as we talk about the sourcing of talent, the sourcing of human capital, I am dying to know what your opinion of the sourcing hero is.
So based on all the challenges that we've seen last year, my perspective on sourcing hero is a simple one. Sourcing hero is a sourcing leader that was able to navigate his or her team in a positive and an uplifting manner. Now, when I say leader, I'm not necessarily talking about, the head honcho, the VP or CPO. It could be leadership of one person, could be leadership of your team, could be leadership of your group, your division, or it could be of your whole organization. So in these trying times, anybody that was able to truly facilitate, coach, encourage their teams through a unprecedented time period, being able to empathize with them while still holding them accountable and understanding how everybody's reality has changed. Everybody's facing this same challenges, but in different ways, was the true hero. And we saw examples of those, of people that were not just on the front lines of getting PPE for their company or for their clients, but it was those leaders, those sourcing hero leaders out there that were truly keeping their team by their side and allowing them a lot of resources and leeway and whatever they needed to continue to be able to support themselves and their teams.
I love that. Yeah, being flexible has certainly, I think, been the difference maker with our team getting through the pandemic. Are there any examples of sourcing heroes you want to call out right now that you saw?
There's a lot of them, right? There's a lot I've seen from the transportation world. There's a lot I've seen on the food side, even on the chemical side, that were there to help support their team and provided them opportunities. They sat with them, understood exactly what their challenges were, if they couldn't come back to the office, why they couldn't, or if they wanted to, as you mentioned, the flexibility to continue to be remote while still performing. So we heard countless stories and examples of this, right? I mean, there's a leader here in Chicago in which, she fosters that spirit within her team, and she's got a team of leaders all over. She's a leader herself, and she's got her team all over the country that look up to her, respect her, because she has empowered them, right? She actually has her vision instilled, and they have bought in, and they will do anything for her, right? And then there's another CPO, that a client of ours down in Florida, that was at the front lines himself, right? When the CEO said, hey, we need somebody to project manage this, we don't know how we're going to get all these PPE equipment for our folks. We don't know how to move it amongst all of our DCs and fulfillment centers, he raised his head and said, I'll take the lead on this with my team, and we'll make sure that everybody gets the hand sanitizers that they need and all the other equipment if it means going to different locations myself. So many examples of those. Was really heartwarming to hear that and to see the loyalty that bred in their teams, right? These leaders are busy supporting their teams and their companies. They don't realize this. So when we talk to them, we tell them that, our earlier point, Catherine, about how location independence has become such a important aspect from a workplace. So even if you're in a nice place like Miami or LA and, you thought, your people are safe because nobody's prying them out of there and taking them to Nebraska. Well, we were having these leaders understand that by you leading this way and inspiring your folks and then performing at these high levels for you, you have gendered that kind of loyalty to them and to the company, which you didn't even think about, did you? They're like, oh, actually, no, we did not. We didn't think of two things. One, that our people are just as much now vulnerable to being pried away. And number two, on us continuing to provide them the resources, flexibility, the support, the ability to empathize with them will actually make it a lot harder for anybody else to steal our talent away from us. So that was a good one. They have that light bulb moment.
There you go. And as the managing partner of MRA Global, helping these organizations find great talent, I'm sure they did not want to let go of all of that great work you've done.
Absolutely. At least we hope so.
So going from one sourcing hero to another, I'm referencing a previous conversation that we had about the WOW candidate. I think it is so important for our audience to hear some of the context behind that. I'd asked you, okay, so what are you looking for when you're sourcing procurement candidates? And you said, wow, walk on water candidate. In my mind, that's going to be the future of sourcing heroes, right? Can you expand on what that is that you're looking for and why that's even a thing that you've come to even categorize?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for remembering that. I should really trademark that one, shouldn't I? The WOW candidate. And, when we're talking to clients, as we're assessing and evaluating, presenting talent, a lot of times the expectations, helping them confront reality and aligning expectations is a big part of what we do when it comes to talent. Because even now, contrary to what people think, just because there's an abundance of labor does not mean there is not a scarcity of talent. But what we mean by that is the A players, what they call as the purple unicorn that everybody's looking for. So, which I coined the WOW candidate. So there are a lot of different aspects when it comes to some technical know-how, depending on which industry you are, what level you are. But there are a few traits that would be a common denominator for those WOW candidates as our clients seek them. And as part of our coaching, when we're talking to good candidates and helping them advance in their career. So, there's a basic understanding of, okay, if it's on the technical side, you understand the sourcing part, you understand how to compete the business, you understand the technological aspects and how they can complement your efforts. But also, most importantly on that is the quantitative aptitude. So being comfortable with on the complexity of data analysis and understanding how important a role that plays in almost everything that we do, right? The aspect of now having that kind of a understanding, the ability to dissect and slice and work with data and use different tools, whether it's Tableau, BI, or other, P2P software. There's plenty of that out there. So that is still very important. However, Catherine, one of the most important things now we're also hearing is what we call on the soft skills. So it's no longer important just to have that. It's we're seeing more and more of the emphasis on those skills on the soft side. So what do we mean by that? Can this person come in and not just collaborate and influence, but can they storytell effectively? Right. So the best way that you will win over your stakeholders internally, the way you will collaborate effectively is by taking a bunch of data, and God knows we've got more than we know what to do with in almost every industry, and the ability to put that in a way that it makes sense, in which you gain buy-in from not just your peers, but across the organization. So storytelling, collaboration, building those rapport and relationships, both internally and externally, is actually only continuing in importance. And it's highly subjective. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to assess if somebody has that. But is it something that can be trained and can they be coached in? Absolutely, they can.
I don't know if you've listened to the episode with Gunn. I think he was like our second or third episode. That's exactly what he said was the difference for him and his career was having the ability to tell stories and to put the data and the numbers and package it in a way that stakeholders cared. And to build up that, like you said, the soft skills, it's not just good enough now that you can analyze. Now you've got to be able to empathize, right, with your stakeholders.
Exactly right. And I would be remiss here if I didn't give my congrats on what you've done here from the Sourcing Hero podcast. Nick's I had not heard, but I've heard several others, and everything from, the collaboration to the disruption to the technology part. You brought on some really accomplished folks with a lot of excellent information out there. So good job on that.
Thank you. And my skill set does not lie so much with the technical conversations that we could have about procurement, right? There are many other podcasts and procurement leaders that can navigate those conversations all day. I care more about sharing the human side and giving people an inside look at, the inner thinkings of what went on. I mean, honestly, in this last year has been a major focus of the topics of conversation. And normally in this format, I would ask you what your advice is for up and coming procurement. I feel like you just kind of went through it, was very clear, but let's just understate that one more time. If you've got a room full of young procurement professionals, or maybe people that are just wanting to up their game and keep up with the evolution of what's happened this last year, what would you tell them?
That's a great question, Catherine. And what I would tell them, and this is something that I'm really passionate about, especially over the past couple of years and was only accentuated this last 1 year, is I would encourage all of these young folks, the up and comers, to the most important thing for them to have, if you think about agility and continuing to grow their careers, is the learning part, right? So 2 parts of that. Number 1, to look at their careers as a venture, as a business, as a startup. So they should view what they're looking to do in their careers. They're looking to build their expertise, and just as important, build their brand, is to say, okay, we have now entered the workforce. We've been working for several years. How do we continue to grow? How do we continue to expand? So just because you're working for a company does not mean you cannot have that startup mentality. And by that startup mentality is always finding ways to improve, understanding the risks, knowing that you're never going to have 100% of the data to make a decision, and having a plan on how you can continue to grow your skill set, your competence, while at the same time staying abreast of the opportunities out there that allow you to pivot if there's something else you want to do, if it's a different function, if there's a different career, and to be responsive and to be ready for those opportunities, regardless of whether it's, a linear path or it could be a lateral movement and then upwards. So to stay atop of those. Now, how do you do that? How do you stay that mindset of a startup mindset with the mindset of being able to pivot? That's where the learning agility comes. So you have to take ownership for your own career, your own brand, your own learning, because no one's waiting to tell you what to do, right? So if there's one thing I would instill into people, it's you've got to take that ownership yourself. So find ways in which you can work on creating your own brand, continue to take classes, read as much as you can, network with people, right? So the ability to network and learn, those one-on-one conversations are so underrated yet so powerful. So that is how you will continue to then be alerted to what's happening out in the marketplace. So now the other thing we talked about, the accelerant earlier in our conversation on how everything's been accelerated. So is online education now. So is the ability to take so many different areas of whatever interests you, right? Do you like blockchain? Are you into the robotic side of things? Are you you're into cryptocurrency, whatever it is, or you're into advanced negotiations? Find ways and invest that time in yourself. Doesn't have to be, the company isn't paying for it. No, it's okay. Pay for it yourself and continue to hone in on your skills, your craft, and most importantly, your brand.
What a perfect answer, honestly. And learning has been a very common theme on this show. I want to say that almost everyone has touched on it at some point. It's been threaded through conversations, obviously with Phil Eidson, Art of Procurement, Joanna Martinez. She's got her own training skill sets that she's put out there. Frank Chorus was huge on finding a mentor and staying educated, never stop learning. And I have been in several industries throughout my marketing career. I have never seen a more education hungry group of people in my life. Procurement is like continuous education, like to the max. I feel like that is something that it's a trait that I see in just about every procurement leader, or just anybody that I see even on like LinkedIn or Instagram. They're always talking about that's the deal, like putting out resources and having education.
You're absolutely right. And the good ones will understand, the progressive ones will understand how this function of procurement and sourcing is so unique in that it touches almost every function within a company. So there's very few these types of career opportunities where you can work with marketing, finance, engineering, operations, IT as extensively and as expansively as you can in the world of procurement and sourcing. So, one of my mentors taught me, one of my best CPOs was, a good procurement person is first and foremost a good business person. So for you to learn the ins and outs of a business, understand where your company makes money, what is their differentiation, how are you helping them, top line and bottom line, is what your true value add your true value add is as an employee. So all of these things that you're going to do, as I just mentioned, to invest in yourself by learning, all those learnings is what you take over into your career as a procurement practitioner and deploy those skills that you've learned to help yourself be successful in your role and help your company as well. So I love to be able to, when we're talking to this top talent and others, to let them know about the different books that are out there, different types of tools that are now available, different influencers they should be aware of. Just whatever interests them, find that niche and hone in on that and become an expert on that and find a way that it benefits your job, your company, and just as importantly, benefits yourself from a career perspective.
If you want, and if you're willing, I would love to include a short list of some of those resources that you would hand off, and I'll include it in our podcast recap.
Absolutely. I will provide those.
Love that. Thank you. And you've spoken so well for MRA Global. If our listeners haven't quite put the pieces together of what MRA Global does by now, then I'm not sure what to do, because you've given such a great platform for them in this conversation. Is there anything else that you'd like to provide us, about MRA Global? Like what's coming up this year? Any events, anything that we need to be aware of?
Appreciate that, Catherine. So, our jobs and what we do day in and day out is helping connect top talent with the best opportunities out there. So that's something that's always been a passion of mine back when I started my career. It's the leadership part was the things that were most near and dear to me. The ability to find talent, connect talent, it was something I'd been doing very early in my career, and it now progressed into a broader sphere of helping companies. So we're always out there trying to make sure we have the top talent on our radar. We're very well embedded in the function. So we're active with, ISM, with Procurious, with now what you're doing here. We've actually created a first of a kind job board as well called Supply Chain Spark. So that's part of the learnings that came out of the pandemic where, the verticalization that's happening, the niche aspect of how everything is being formed around a community, we realized that there is no specialized job board just for our function. So, and it's all supply chain, right? It includes materials, logistics, distribution, to on the sourcing piece and procurement. So we wanted to create that ability for candidates to come and find the opportunities specific to their needs and their background, and for companies to know that the candidates applying here are not going to be finance or engineering or sales and marketing. These will be supply chain management professionals. So, with the pandemic, Catherine, that's one of the things that also came to the fore, that there's millions of people that lost opportunities for no fault of their own. And for them to now scale back and be employed again is going to be the biggest priority in our country after the vaccine, after overcoming the health crisis. The biggest thing is to get people back to work. And if average turnover in a year is between 2 to 3% in this country, it's now 10, 15, 20%. And obviously it's improved since the summertime, but still long ways to go. So this is our way of helping to, again, stay true to our niche, find ways to be able to connect people with opportunities. So that's another thing that we created. And then finally, I'll mention one last thing is we also created a online, again, in the interest of education and having folks improve themselves, we created a course for calling it Revitalize Your Career, helping those folks that are in between successes and are looking to find that next opportunity, or those people that are stuck in their current jobs and they've been there for 10 years or 20 years. They don't know how to advance. They don't know how to market themselves. So we actually just are about to conclude our first ever online course. It went very well. And it was everything from moving beyond the resume, right? Well, like we talked about, talking about increasing your brand and realizing how much value there is in the online world and how you need to make sure you have a good footprint using social media, right? Having not just a resume, but having a website potentially, right? Putting content, thought leadership. So again, all of this in the service of helping our practitioners in procurement. And one of the tagline we came up with, you kind of touch on it a little bit, is we're trying to put the human back into hiring. So that's our goal here.
Perfect. Put the human back into hiring. I think that's going to be very compelling this year. And just for everybody listening, make sure you check out our podcast page for this episode. We'll have all of those resources linked. And you said that the new hiring board is supplychainspark.com. Okay. And if somebody's wanting to look more into MRA Global, what's the website there?
It's MRAGS.com, MRAGS.com.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been such a pleasure getting to know you and connecting with you. Big shout out to Hugo Britt for making the introduction. Love that guy. He's such an incredibly talented writer. And I'm hoping that there's going to be more partnership throughout this year. I hope we get to work together again very soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Catherine, for having me. It was a joy, and keep up the great work, and looking forward to all your other future guests out there.
Thank you.